It's officially my favorite time of the year. Well, almost. Fall is almost here, but as far as crafting goes, we're into our Halloween collections. And this is the first of probably 3 bundles. And I'm really excited to show you what we've got here today. Today we're going to start off with a really cute, somewhat vintage little luminary featuring a pumpkin with a witch's hat that doubles not only as a luminary but also as a little favor box. So if you have a little grandchild or a child or a best friend or anyone that loves Halloween, you want to give them something special that they can eat and then also display proudly, this is exactly what you've been looking for. So let's dive right in and take a look at what we have here. As usual, I'm going to begin by just kind of piecing some things together and getting things set up so we can get our feet wet and kind of get a feel for our glue and the whole process. So there is some vellum in this bundle. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with the hat, and of course I've put one piece of vellum in place already just to kind of test things out, but what we want to do is we want to go ahead and fold everything at the little score marks here. Now there's some score marks next to some really thin areas here, so just be careful. Use your table to kind of help you. Don't do it in midair because you end up probably creasing the piece here, and we don't want that. So go ahead and get everything nice and folded and prepped, and we're going to put our vellum on these pieces here, and then we've got a few more little prep things that we're going to do just to kind of streamline this process a little bit, and also to just get in the groove. I want to kind of do some simple things before we get into some of the harder things to just make life easier. Okay, so you'll notice that I've already put down one piece of vellum. And I did this just to show you that for this piece down here, it doesn't matter if you put it on the outside or on the inside of our piece here. We're going to put some little tendrils on our pumpkin, and they're going to be glued to the inside here. So sometimes vellum is hard to adhere things to. So instead of putting them on the inside, I'm going to put them on the outside. They're going to be covered up, so you don't need to worry too much about, how it looks right now. Just get it on there and just make sure that it gets a good hold. And we have a total of 7 of these. And I probably went a little too heavy on the glue here for the vellum. All you need is a few little dots and it will stay. So let's cover up our little circular areas here with our vellum pieces. So when we put our little tea light inside of our jack-o'-lantern, which is pretty customary, we'll have nice little pretty colors popping through. Okay, and I'm going to try to be a little more delicate with my glue here, just so that I don't get any of it kind of spewing out. But yes, it is that time. And let me just show you real quick here. This piece is going to go on top of the pieces that we're working on right now. So you can see, as long as you've got it covered up nicely, it'll be fine. Meaning, make sure that you get the vellum portion aligned as precisely as you can. Just kind of keep it just above the score mark on the little trapezoid there at the bottom. And then don't go up too high. Kind of keep it right about there. Keep it within the guidelines of the little score marks there. But anyway, so yeah, it's hard to believe that summer is coming to a close. There's that. I don't know if you guys notice it. I guess it depends on where you live. My Midwesterners here, there's almost like an actual moment of time, maybe even a minute, sometimes maybe a day, where you can just feel those autumn winds And that crisp air starting to kind of push that humid air out of the way. And I just think that autumn living is just a lot more comfortable. You're not constantly sweating. You can always put more layers on if you get cold, where in the summertime, if you get too hot, you can't really peel your skin off. And really the only way to cool off is either at a beach or in the air conditioning. And I know not many of us live on a beach, which is unfortunate. It would be nice if we all did. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our little triangular pieces here and we're gonna get these glued over these little triangular areas. So just doing little bits of dots here and there. And just make sure that you get the opening covered up nicely. Should fit beautifully. And just be patient while that really sets. I'm gonna leave this open. We're not gonna actually assemble this thing until we're sure that all of our vellum has a nice hold, because we want it to look nice and crisp once everything is said and done. So just cover up the little cutouts. And if you don't have colored vellum, in the Dreaming Tree group on Facebook, I have a document under I think it's the documents or files section. I believe it's called commonly used items or something like that, where I have a link to a website called Fine Art Store. And you can go to Fine Art Store, do a search for vellum. They have large sheets of vellum, and we just kind of cut them as we need. And they come in a lot of great colors, especially colors for Halloween. There's some nice purples and yellows and oranges, very vibrant colors. I've also heard in the group that some of you will take just the standard vellum that you get at like Joann's or Michael's and just hit it with some ink, which works as well. Okay, so that's kind of what it should look like. Again, you can put these on the inside here if you want. I'm putting them on the outside because we're going to glue some tendrils to the inside, and I just want to keep everything consistent. So let's put this off to the side for now. Okay, so I've done a little bit of pre-prep on this next section here just to save time. And this is the lid to our box. You'll notice here that I've already put down some of the panels, and rather than have you put a million little stars and dots on the outside of this, we just have a panel that goes on the inside to achieve that same effect. I already put the 3 down here. We're gonna put one more here to finish it up. So you're gonna be putting all 6 in place, and you're gonna do that by just running some glue around the perimeter, and then maybe just a little bit along the inside as well. Make sure that you get that glue out to the very edges here. And I'm using gold glitter. So, as I mentioned before, with glitter on AC cardstock, you always want to kind of give it a little extra time to set, because the glitter is not as porous. Maybe it is porous, and maybe just not porous in the same way as standard cardstock is. It doesn't have all those little fibers and nooks and crannies. I think it's basically like a plastic, I guess. I'm not really sure. Pretty sure that that's what glitter's made out of. Okay, so you're gonna do all 6 just like I did. I'm gonna let this set as well. These are probably already good to go, but I don't want to risk anything. I'm gonna put this off to the side momentarily, and we can take a look at the base of our box here. Okay, and as you can see, this is what we have, and we can actually assemble this thing. So first thing you want to do is take and fold everything at your score marks. Okay, so this is the first actual 3D assembly that we're going to do, and this is one piece that you're not really going to see because it's going to be covered up by our lid. So you want to kind of line it up like this, and what we're going to do is we're going to join these two pieces together. You can do it this way, you can do it the other way, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start on this side here. I'm going to get my glue on my tab, and then of course just a nice little line up against the very edge so we get that nice clean crisp seam, and just wipe off any excess. And I'm just kind of thinning it out, makes it easier. It will set a lot faster. And kind of using my little cutting mat here to help me with the alignment, just doing it flat. That looks good. And then just push that tab over. Okay, give it a few seconds to get its initial hold, and then you can kind of see what I did there, just folded it onto itself. Just kind of run my fingers along the very edge there and make sure that everything is nicely aligned. And it looks pretty darn good. Okay, so now I can go ahead and close this up by gluing these two pieces together, and we can continue working flat. For now, we may as well take advantage of it. And a nice little line right up to the edge. And just spread that nice and thin. Okay, and you can actually just lay this down flat, and that should meet up perfectly. There we go. And then you can take it and fold it onto itself. Adjust it a little bit if need be. Get it nice and precise. Okay, so there is the beginning of our base here. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece here and just close it up like so. So, let me clean off my glue nozzle here. I'm going to get some glue onto the tabs here, just randomly. Just get some coverage. And then a nice fine line right along the edge that we can spread kind of thin. Pardon my messages. Forgot to turn my phone off. Okay, and I'm just going to spread that out to the edge. There we go. And don't worry if you don't get it perfect this time around. We can always go in and fix it. All right, now we're going to go ahead and just flare these out just a little bit so that as this thing's pushing down, it grabs more of that surface and makes contact with more of that glue. And you may need to kind of nudge some of the walls in, or maybe nudge some of the walls out. But that actually went on perfectly. I'm applying a downward force with my finger while kind of just caressing the very edge, like so. And there we go. Just focus on that edge. And then you can flip it over, just kind of push down from the inside. And there is our little container for our box. Okay, now to kind of sturdy this up a little bit, just throw a little bit of glue onto the tabs and maybe just a little bit in the center. You've got another piece like this. Just going to slide that in and glue that down. And it's going to hide those tabs and make our base more sturdy. Okay, so that is all ready to go for our lid. Now let's go back to the lid temporarily. We can finish putting this thing together, but there are some little moons that we want to add to this. A total of 6, one for each side here. And let me see here. Yeah, so our moons are going to go like this. And we do have little markers here to help you with the alignment. You just want to put the little tips of the moons right up against those little markers. Now I did hit that with my little felt applicator, as well as, in this case, a rhubarb stock color on this AC cardstock color. Just a little bit of red to sort of age and distress and make the, oops, oh boy, make the orange look a little more distressed. So just line that up nicely with those little guides, push that down, kind of complete that look, and just repeat that process 5 more times on the rest of the sides here. And just make sure you get that glue out to the tip. And like that. There we go. And just repeat a few more times. So the base of this will be done here shortly. I think what we're going to do next is put together our little rosettes, because I want to give those a little bit of time to set, and I know a lot of you like your glue guns. I know I should buy one. Well, I have one. It burnt out and I bought another one. I just don't want to use it because I'm tired of messing with them. And I hate the little strings that they leave everywhere. And a couple times I forgot to turn it off and found it on my little rug. I was starting to singe it. So I think the universe is telling me, just be patient and use glue unless it really, really calls for it. So we'll make our rosettes and let them set, because I am using some gold glitter to create one of the layers of the rosettes. So I know for sure that that's going to need a little extra time to set. So we'll get those going, and then we can work on putting the hat together, and then finally our little pumpkin. Okay, so there is the base of, well, actually this would be the lid of our box. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to connect these two pieces together, and just like we did with this piece here, I'm just going to assemble it the same exact way. So I'm going to go over here on this side, and I'm going to get my glue on this piece here. And again, working a little bit of glue right out to the edge. Just like so. Okay, and let's get that lined up nicely. I'm kind of focusing my gaze on the bottom there to make sure that that is nice and lined up there at the bottom. Pardon my head for just a second. There we go, that looks good. And just fold that tab over and give it a good push. Now the back of the gold foil is a little more porous and does seem to want to cooperate better than the actual, not foil, but the glitter, sorry. The front of that glitter is just really hard to work with sometimes, but okay, so there's that. And just like we did the first time, we're going to connect these two pieces together. So we want to get our glue on this tab here, like that. Spread that out. Okay, I'm going to lay that down and just connect it nicely. It should match up perfectly. And just push, get that connected, and then you can fold it over onto itself. Just make sure that everything's lined up, and that lined up perfectly for me. You can tell that it lined up nicely because these tabs here, you can't see the other one as you look this way. If it was off, you might be able to see this back tab coming off this way a little bit, but you don't see that. So that indicates to me that we did a pretty darn good job of getting everything aligned. So just like we did with the bottom of our box, we're going to get our glue on the tabs. So we'll go ahead and continue here. Just getting our glue on the tabs, and then of course get our little fine line across there. And my glue bottle is behaving and flowing beautifully right now. So I want to kind of take advantage of that. Okay. Okay, so just like we did before, let's flare these up a little bit and push this down and onto these tabs. And just might have to, like I said, nudge some things around to get everything to line up precisely, but it should line up precisely. And then just run your finger along the edge here. Make sure that we're pushing down so that we get a nice clean seam. And that looks great. Okay. Here we go. All right, so our lid is good. Now I'm just gonna flip this over and push down on the inside as well. Okay. Perfect. So let's test this out. There we go, that fits beautifully. So there's the base. Next thing we want to do with our base is we have these little accent pieces here that are scored, and we're going to apply them like this. Okay, so we're going to take these little accent pieces here and glue them to the tops and bottoms of our little box here. This is the top of the box, the actual lid, but I'm going to keep this on the base just to kind of make it a little more, just a little more rigid and stiff so that it's easier to work with. So what we want to do is I'm going to start with just the center here and get the center part in place. Make sure that you get that glue out to the little scalloped areas there as well. And then also I'm going to put this down and make sure that I get my glue right up to the top as well. And we want to align the top of this black piece with the top of the box, get it nice and centered. The little areas here that have little score marks should line up perfectly with the little edges of each face portion of our box. Give that a few seconds to really set and kind of focus your pressure up at the top here just to make sure that that is nice and flush. We don't want that kind of pulling away because that's not going to look very nice. Okay, and then once that's in place, you can kind of just take this and peel it back and apply your glue on the next section. Just be very gentle so that you don't push on this too hard so that it doesn't pull away from the area that we already did. And also here, you want to get a little bit of glue right out to that very edge, the end of the little strip here, so that it sits nice and flush up to the edge there. So we're going to push that down, and that should meet up right on the edge here perfectly. Everything is meticulously engineered. And again, just applying a little bit of pressure here right at the top so that stays nice and adhered to the surface of our box. And that looks good. Now we're going to also put a rosette on top of this. So that's going to kind of hide that top a little bit. So if you don't get it pristinely perfect, it's not the end of the world. So cut yourself a little bit of slack and don't worry too much about perfection, but do your best. And usually your best is good enough because everything is designed to fit perfectly. And then of course, I'm going to make sure that I walk you through every little tidbit here so that there's no stone left unturned. Okay, so look at that. That looks really nice. And what we're going to do now is the same thing on the other side. And we're like we did here on the front, we're going to start with the center. I always feel like that's the easiest. So I'm going to flip this all the way over, grab another one of these pieces, and get it folded at the score mark here. Okay, and let's get our glue on the back of this here. Again, working just a little bit of that glue out to the very bottom of that little scalloped area. And I'm going to spread that thin. And again, kind of using the little areas here that are scored as my guides to center this correctly, and nudging this up to the top so it's nice and flush with the top of the box. And we're going to repeat the same process on the bottom, and that's going to make this thing look more like a work of art rather than just a box, so that when you give this to someone, they can take the little gift or the little bag of treats or whatever it is, your homemade cookies or whatever you plan on giving them. And then once they're done, you can put a little tea light, and you can actually include the tea light when you give it. That would probably be a nice thing to do. And you can light it up and let it glow through October 31st. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like me and love Halloween and love all things Halloween and would really, really appreciate a cute gift like this, especially because it's handmade, especially some of the older demographic that really appreciates the vintage aspect of Halloween, Halloween's roots. I actually have a collection of vintage Halloween postcards. I'm not like a crazy collector, but there's a few antique shops here near where I live in Geneva, Batavia, St. Charles, and occasionally I will run into a really cool vintage Halloween postcard, and I just can't resist but pick it up. I think a part of me, I don't know, there's this romantic thing about well, basically any time other than the time we live in right now, because I feel like it was such a simpler time. Now, I'm not complaining because I love technology, but I do sometimes feel like it gets a little crazy, and there's something romantic about, you know, the old days, I guess you can call them. All right, so you can see how beautiful that looks. Okay, and that went on perfectly. From the top, it looks great. Again, it's going to be covered up with a rosette, so even if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. And we're just going to repeat the same process here on the bottom to add the trim to the bottom. So go ahead and fold at your score marks. Get that glue on there, right up to that little scalloped area as well. And let's get that in place. And you want to line that up with the very bottom of your lid. This is where actually taking the base off might be helpful so that you're not accidentally lining this up with the bottom of the box, or you know, the actual container itself. So that is going on nicely. I can't wait to see. You know, it's funny, and I've said this before, but you know, I'll actually share this with you here. This is the initial sketch from our art director, Ron. This is what we're trying to make. And we go through prototypes and we prototype everything, but we don't use the final colors until this process that you're watching right now. So myself, Ron, Diana, we don't actually know what the end result is going to look like until I actually make it in the studio here along with you, because this is what the prototype looked like. Okay, we did that all in just whites and blacks because those colors are not as expensive as using like a gold glitter or something like that. So our prototypes are more or less just there to make sure that everything goes together well. And because Ron is so awesome with color, we've been doing this for I don't know how long now, and I don't think we've ever run into a situation where I had to redo something on video because something didn't look right, or you know, you get what I'm saying. So we've got a great team behind me, Ron with his amazing designs, and Diana with the engineering that makes all of this go together beautifully. And like I mentioned, this is my first time putting this together. So if you can do it, or if I can do it, I mean, you can definitely do it. Okay, so I've got that other part on there, I've got that part on there, so you can see what that's starting to look like from the front. And then we've got one more little piece here, and you can skip ahead. This is monotonous. I know I'm just kind of blabbing now, or you can hang out with me. So again, getting that glue up to the little scallops. Make sure that you get some right there on the bottom. Start in the center, pop that on. Use the little scored areas as your guides, and then you can kind of run your finger along the top to make sure that everything is nice and flush. And kind of give that a squeeze, make sure it holds. And this thing's starting to become really solid. It will definitely withstand the test of time here. Okay, and moving on to the next section here. And just fold that over. Should meet up perfectly with that little edge there. Look at that. I'm so impressed with the work that my team does. There we go. And last but not least, we got one more little piece here. Get our glue on here. There we go. And close that up. Make sure it's nice and flush. There we go. All right. So our base is now complete. Okay. You can pop that on there. There we go. Very sturdy, really pretty. And you can get that out of the way here. All right. So now let's put our hat together really quick, because that should go really quick. So what we're going to do, you'll notice that there's this piece here that has a little cutout. This is actually a tab, okay, and that's going to get glued behind this side here to kind of form our hat, okay. And once we have that in place, we can move on to the next step. So let's just kind of fold that a little bit, get our glue on this tab here. Don't go too crazy. And then a nice line right up to the edge, like so. Spread that out. Okay, and we can do this flat. Just fold it over so that it connects nicely. And line it up. It should just line up, but you know, this is kind of a bit of a weird shape. So just want to make sure that it looks good. Okay, perfect. There we go. Just kind of flattening that out, adding my pressure there. Okay, so there is our little hat, part of it anyway. Okay, and then what we're going to do, these tabs are going to get folded out eventually. Let's put that off to the side for a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these two pieces. It's the same piece, but I'm going to flip it like this so that the pattern's visible on both sides. And I'm going to glue it together. Actually, you know what? It really doesn't matter. If you have a pattern piece, you could do it either way. You could just have a solid color under here, or you know, whatever you want to do. Basically, we're putting these two together to kind of stiffen up the brim of this hat, just to make it a little more sturdy, because with just one layer, it might get a little wobbly. Actually, I think I'm going to go with a solid purple on the bottom. So I'm going to just glue the pattern to the inside here so that only the top of it has the pattern. And then just make sure that you get a little bit of glue out around the edge of the brim here, and then maybe a little bit on the inside too. And just lay it right on top of itself, or on top of the other piece. Make sure that you get it nice and aligned. It's a symmetrical piece, so it doesn't matter which way you have it, it should fit perfectly. And then just kind of give it a good push all the way around. Make sure that gets a good hold. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better. It's a little more stiff now. We've got a nice little piece of gold trim to go around our brim. So we're going to glue that in place. Now, this is kind of a, you know what, I'm going to put this on my surface here, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper so that thin stuff like this, sometimes it's hard to hold in the air and work with. So I'm just going to put it on my surface. And the reason I put this down is so that in case I get some glue that spews out, I don't end up getting it on the next thing that I'm working on. So just kind of work that glue into those little scallop areas. And I think that because it's so thin, there's almost no way you can miss getting it out to the edge. And then just place it carefully on the brim. And get it nice and aligned. Might have to kind of nudge it out here and there. And just push down to get it to stick. There we go. Okay. So there is the brim of our hat. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and pop it through here, like so. And then we're going to take and glue these tabs to the underside of our brim. So let's flare these out, and let's pop this down, kind of give it a push to get it to really sit in place correctly. Okay. And then we're just going to take and just glue the little tabs one at a time. And we've got a little top for this thing. We're also going to put a little gold pearl on top, and then we're going to dress the little vellum portion up as well. But one step at a time here. So what I'm going to do is just peel back one of these tabs. You don't need a lot of glue here, and actually I would probably be very sparse with the glue so that it doesn't end up coming up through the top here. And I'm just kind of pushing down from the top here to get that to stick here. You can see where that goes. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the opposite side, just like that. I'm going to push this down onto the inside of the brim, and then just use my table for leverage to get that to stick. I'm going to try to keep everything nice and crisp and flat where possible. And then I'm going to go over 90 degrees to another side here. I kind of went a little crazy there with the glue. And then just push that down. And I think you get the idea here. And moving it right along. You can probably, at this point, maybe do 2 at a time, just to save some time and speed things up a little bit. Because I know that we've got it nice and lined up now, so there's not really much wrong that we can do. Okay, there's that, just a little bit, just so it holds. And push that down. There we go. And one more. Beautiful. And it's coming together. Okay. Okay, so now with this little trim piece here, you'll notice that every section has either a star or a moon except for one. Okay, this is going to be where our little belt buckle is going to go. And you'll notice that on every section of the actual hat, there's a vellum except for one. So that is going to be where this goes. And all these other ones are going to overlap here. So with that said, let's start with the center here, and let's get our glue on the piece with no design on it. Okay, and let's get that nice and centered on our hat. And I'm just kind of letting it sit on the base of or the top of the brim, I should say. and hold that in place. You can kind of wrap it around a little bit as you're pushing down to adhere it, and just make sure that it's nice and level with the base of your hat. Okay, give that a few seconds to dry. We want to make sure that that sits on there nicely. And then you can see here how nice that's going to look once it's all done. Okay, give that a few seconds to really set before we move on and peel this back. So what I'm going to suggest we do, we can do this in just little stages here. What I'll probably do is just do 2 sections at a time. So just throw some glue around the shape here. Okay, and then just pull it over. Make sure that it's nice and resting on the base of the brim, and that the little scored areas, the little corners, line up with the corners of the actual hat itself. Make sure that you've got it nice and flush up against the black portion, in my case, the black portion of the hat. Nice and level. That looks perfect. Okay, let's just peel that back and get our glue on the next sections here. And then this last section here, you want to make sure that you get that glue right out to the very edge so that we get a nice clean seam. And you don't want that pulling away. Okay, so again, just kind of resting on the base of our brim. Here we go. And if you need to, just kind of push, grab a finger, stick it inside there, and just squeeze this piece up against the black piece between 2 of your fingers to make sure that you don't have any of the top portion of this peeling off or peeling back or trying to come off. I think you get what I'm saying. But there you go, look how cute that is. All right, so then we can go over to this other side here and just repeat the same process. Let's just get our glue around the shape here. And actually, I'm just going to finish it off. There's only one left. Why the heck not? I'm going to get that glue right out to the end, right up to the edge of the end of this little strip here, just to make sure that it doesn't come pulling apart. And look at how nicely that meets up. Pretty much perfect. There we go. All right. That looks great. Okay. So there's that, which leaves our little buckle here. And what we're going to do is just take and glue the buckle right to the front. Okay, like that. Which means we're going to get that nice and centered. So part of it, if you take a look here, part of it is actually not even sticking to the side here. So what we're going to want to do is just put a little bit of glue on the inside of these pieces here. One on this little, on the actual part of that buckle that goes into the belt portion, and then just a little bit of glue on the top and the bottom of that. That's all you really need. You don't need a lot. And that is going to rest flush on the hat. Make sure you get it nice and centered, and just push that up against the hat and let that set. Here we go. Okay, so to finish this off, I'm going to take this piece here, and just like we did with the box as well as the base here of a hat, and we're going to glue this on and just wrap it around like so. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the center, the centermost piece. Well, there's like 2 centers, so you can pick one. And I'm going to glue that down first and then kind of wrap it around. And I also am going to start with, actually apply the center of this right onto what I would consider the center of the hat where the little buckle is. Okay, so I'm going to start there. Just get that piece in place. And it should just kind of wrap around and meet up and match up with the little edges of the hat here. So get the first two sections in place. I put glue on the middle two, I guess what I would consider the middle two. And then I can peel this back and get glue on the remaining sections here. And just try to get a little bit out to the little wispy little areas there at the bottom. And I'm going to just kind of spread that out because I don't want it popping out. I don't want the glue going crazy on me here. Okay, and just wrap that around and hold it down for a few seconds while it sets. And as I mentioned, I'm going to put a nice little gold pearl right at the top of this. If you don't have a full-sized gold pearl, like if you only have the halves, you can actually take two of them and glue them together to make it a ball. Okay. So just get that glue onto the remainder of this piece here, and just thinning it out. It'll set a lot quicker that way, and it should meet pretty accurately there. There we go. Okay, so there's the top of our hat, all ready to go. And that pretty much concludes the assembly of the hat, which means we have just the pumpkin and the little rosette left to go here. You can see how this is starting to turn out. It's looking really cute. Okay, so let's let that be for now. And you know what? We're gonna take and kind of just make the rosettes real quick, just to get that out of the way and let them set while we work on the actual pumpkin itself. So if you've never made a rosette before, they come in strips like this, and what you need to do is just kind of fold it over onto itself so that the pattern remains on the same side. You don't want to keep folding it over this way. You kind of go back and forth like an accordion fold, I guess you would call it. Okay, so you're going to do that with all four of these strips. We need two of each color to create one rosette. We're going to be gluing them together. And again, here I'm gluing gold foil to gold foil, so we all know that's going to be, or possibly be, a little bit of a pain if you're using just regular glue. If you want to use hot glue, by all means, feel free. I, again, don't like that hot glue gun. It's a pain in the butt. Pain in the butt. And then also, what I did here was I took I've got a dewdrop gold ink that I'm just running over these little scored areas, because this is a white core paper, and I'm just kind of trying to hide that a little bit. So there's a little tip for you. And yes, we're still kind of working and testing out the score tool, the score wheels on the Cricut. We're not ready to move forward with that just yet, but I believe that it might be imminent. So for those of you that have a Cricut Maker, or even a Sizzix Eclipse, because the Eclipse has a kiss cut feature where it kind of just grazes the paper ever so slightly to make score lines instead of cutting. You should be able to use your standard blade and your Sizzix Eclipse to do that as well. Okay, one thing that I need to mention when you're folding these is, with one of these pieces, start the initial fold on one side and make it a mountain fold. Okay, so it looks like a mountain. You can see there it creates a mountain shape. This is a valley fold. This is a mountain fold. This one starts with a mountain fold. Okay, so make sure that you fold one of them using a mountain fold technique, and the other side should end in a mountain fold as well. Okay, and now with this one has a valley fold. So one end starts with the letter V. Instead of like this, it's like this, and then you just continue on with a bunch of valley folds. Okay, so then that way, what we'll do when we get ready to glue this, you can just take and put glue on one section of one of the pieces and take the other section and put it right on top of it. Okay, and then you can kind of just bunch a bunch of these together and just use that to kind of squeeze it into place and hold it so that the glue dries. Only one section's being glued to the other section, but I'm just kind of bunching it up to make it easier to kind of squeeze that. Okay, there we go. So that is where it's connected right there. It's just one piece overlapping on the other piece. Okay, and then just kind of scrunch it back together. Oops, just like that. And what we're literally going to do is the same exact thing on the other side. So I'm going to put glue on this side here, just like that. I'm going to take this piece and bring it over and glue it to that piece there. Just make sure that you're not encroaching over that score mark. And that's all the way in there nicely. Give it a second to set. Okay, that looks kind of weird right now, but once you flatten it out like this, it turns into a rosette. Okay, so that is what we're looking for. And we're going to repeat that same process. That almost looks like a cupcake wrapper. So we're going to repeat that same process with the gold. Okay, now here I want to show you when I folded these, I started off with 2 mountain folds. Okay, and there's really, well, you can't really glue it like that. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to convert this mountain fold to a valley fold by taking this first piece and just folding it in that way, and then just kind of reversing how I have it folded, just folding it over again and making a mountain fold instead of, actually this is a valley fold, sorry. So I'm just changing up the direction in which this is being folded, which means that I'm going to have to ink this again, which is fine. Not a big deal. And I wonder if I can just keep this all bunched together and just ink it like that. I don't know if I've ever done that before, but I don't see why not. So I'm just kind of flip-flopping the fold pattern here just so that I can get this glued together better. You want to make sure you keep the folding consistent too, because we've got one of these rosettes is going to go right on top of the other one. Okay, let me just try this real quick and see. This is live experimentation here. Oh yeah, I think that might actually work. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, so I'm just going to ink this real quick, get rid of some of that white on there. Almost, definitely gets rid of the white, and it almost like creates like a new little pattern on there. Almost like creates like a striped pattern. Okay. And that looks better. Okay, so now you can go ahead and I'm going to put glue, just like we did with the first rosette. I'm just going to put glue on this section here. And again, this is glitter, so I'm going to put this off to the side in a minute and let it set before I even dream of working with it. We'll take this side here and lay it right on top of that first little strip that I put glue on. Make sure it's nice and aligned. Okay, and then I'm gonna just kind of grab a few extra layers here to kind of sandwich that in there so that when I push it, I don't end up bending it or warping it. And then I'm just gonna give it a really good squeeze like that to get those pieces to stick. And I think that I need to probably let that really adhere before I try to get the other sides connected, because it's it's going to have a tendency to want to pull apart. Okay, and I don't trust you, glitter. No, and I was dead on. It's not even close to being dry yet, so I may just end up putting this in a some kind of a clip or something just to hold it together while it dries. Okay. And in the meantime, while this is setting for me, probably gonna have to do this twice, we can maybe take a look at something else before we move on here. Well, your rosettes may be done. I'm still waiting for one of mine to kind of complete here. And what we're gonna do in the meantime is we're gonna just kind of put our little tendrils together here. So we have 4 of them. There's gonna be 2 on each side of the hat. And I'm just gonna take them and kind of wrap them around my dowel, and not on top of each other, just kind of almost in like a barber pole fashion like this. Okay. And these are gonna mimic the little tendrils on an actual pumpkin plant. Okay. I actually grow pumpkins, so for those of you that don't know, the tendrils kind of are there to help well, ground the pumpkin. Those tendrils are kind of creepy little digits or little hands that go on and grab whatever it can to hold on to dear life so that the pumpkin plant doesn't accidentally like blow away. Now, one side of this should have a little score mark where you can kind of fold it like that, and what we're going to do is we're going to just glue that to the inside of our hat to kind of have the tendrils hanging off. So let's grab our other tendrils here. I think you just kind of put a little bit of glue in one little section and then just glue it down, because you don't really need a score mark. So again, I'm just kind of wrapping it around my dowel in a barber pole fashion like that. We'll get the other ones going here. So there's one long one, one short one. You're going to want one of each for each side, just to kind of change it up a little bit. Okay. There we go. I believe that's a shorty. Here's a long one. I'll start a little bit further up the dowel and just wrap it around. You can kind of change up how closely they're wrapped around the dowel, just to kind of make it look a little more wacky. Whatever you want to do with it is totally fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and we'll glue, let's see, I'm going to glue one to the area here, and then one to the area here, and then vice versa. So let's take a shorty here, and I'll just pop a little bit of glue on the tip of this thing and get that glued right about there. And just push and hold that down, and then you can kind of bend it over so that it kind of sticks out to the side like that. Okay, and then actually this one we want coming back this way. Just be patient while that sets. It's a really small little piece. Yeah, and if you kind of have it coming in towards the front a little bit too much, you can always just take your kind of take it and just train it back a little bit. But just make sure, most importantly, that it gets a good hold. Okay, so now we'll grab the long one here, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue just right next to it, kitty corner, but one section behind it, and just pop that on. Give it a squeeze. Okay, so kind of like that. It's almost like the pumpkin has some hair. Okay, and I might stretch that out just a tad. I'm gonna grab the little shorty here, put a little glue on there, and then from the front, just one over towards the back part of that first section here. And then we'll grab the long one here and glue it right next to it on the next section. So that will pretty much wrap that up. And I can revisit my little rosette. Okay, so there you go. That's kind of cute. And we can always wrap this and make it a little bit tighter later on too. If you have a thinner dowel, if you wrap it around a thinner dowel, you'll get more curl. I guess it's kind of like curling your hair. Not that I would know what that's like, but you get the idea. So here, let's see what it looks like wrapped around a thinner dowel. And maybe your jack-o'-lantern has more curly hair. You see what I mean? So whatever you decide to do with that is fine. The tendrils are just kind of just one of those little details that really makes it a little more unique. It's kind of cute. Okay, so our little tendrils are there. And back to this guy here. And it looks like the glue is finally set. So I'm just gonna go and, so I don't stress it out right now, I'm just gonna glue these two pieces together, just like I did on the other side. We're gonna put glue on one section here. I'm gonna spread that thin so that it sets quicker. And I'm really gonna coat it really good so it sticks. If you're not using glitter, this shouldn't be a problem. And just lay that other side right on there. Give it a good squeeze. And I'm gonna let this set for a little bit while I work on the actual pumpkin head. And give that a squeeze and just let it set for a little bit. Okay, so it's gonna be pretty easy, pretty repetitive process. So we have the panels here. You can see that the face is cut out on 3 of them. Okay, and then the rest of them are just kind of to wrap around it. I did hit this with the same red ink. This is a rhubarb stalk, just to kind of make it look a little more distressed. And then we have here these pieces, and this is what we're going to use to construct the actual frame of our pumpkin. The first thing we want to do, obviously, is fold everything at the score marks here. Now there's a few little sections here that have some very tiny little tabs, and I don't think we're going to really need to worry about gluing the 2 really tiny ones. They're mostly there to kind of prevent the light from shining through places where we don't want it shining through. So just go ahead and get everything folded at the score marks, and then we'll get this guy assembled. You can see there's a tiny little score mark here. Just fold it over. I'm not gonna worry about putting glue on those small, tiny little sections there, but we definitely want to get everything folded, as it will make the process of assembling this that much easier. So just get everything folded at the score marks. And again, those really tiny little areas there, don't be overly concerned about when we start actually putting this together about gluing them to anything. It's not really a big deal. Okay, so we have that in place. I think what we'll do is we'll start by just putting one little segment together, just so that it's easier to kind of hold in your hands. And now the topmost part of our pumpkin is actually going to fold out this way a little bit. So just do that now so you don't forget. And that's kind of where we're going to start, actually. We're going to start by, well, where should we start? We'll probably just start here in this section right above the center. just to kind of work our way up. So little bits of glue here, you don't need a lot, and I'm going to be doing a lot of dabbing here. And just make sure that you get everything lined up nicely. And as you can see, that little piece there, that tiny little tab, I'm not even gonna worry about it. I don't really, it's not structurally important. It is just going to, like I said, it's gonna help prevent some of that light from leaking through, because there's gonna be a little tea light in here. So just get that first section lined up with this section here. Just make sure that the flat side of this is right flush against the little tab there, or the little score line next to the tab. And then we can peel this little triangle out and then just tuck it back under and get that lined up nicely. I may kind of zoom in a little bit maybe so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, and then pull that little triangle out. Just dab a little bit of glue on that guy. Tuck it back under and get that lined up nicely. So the top doesn't like totally flare out, but it doesn't continue the curve. It kind of does change direction ever so slightly. Okay, so there we go. That's one portion of it. And then we can kind of go back to the bottom here. And as I mentioned, this little tab here, you know what, this tab is kind of big enough to throw a little glue on. You can if you want, you don't have to. I don't really think it's that important, but if you want, you can. There's not really much area there to put your finger, so you're more or less just kind of pushing from the outside while I'm taking this hand here, this hand, and pushing it this way while my thumb is kind of stopping it from going any further. So that does actually work, which is fine. You can do that if you want, but you definitely want to get glue on these larger tabs here. And I bet if you skipped that one, that tiny little one there, I don't think it would really make a difference. Okay, so just kind of continuing down here, just making sure that I'm getting everything nice and aligned. Just like that, give it a good squeeze. And so this is our little structure, and then we have the panels that's going to give the illusion of this thing being nice and round, so it's not so jagged. Okay, and the last little triangle here. So once you kind of get in the rhythm here, this will go rather quick. Just tuck that under, get it lined up with this piece here. And just give it a squeeze. And you can see how that's starting to form and take shape. Okay. There we go. All right, next section here. I'm going to start again just above the eyes. I don't know why. I just feel that that's just going to work out better for me. Tuck that under. And just get that connected. Make sure that you've got the correct alignment. Just like that. There we go. And now we may kind of need to work our glue in from the inside so that we don't tear this thing apart. And you can see there, I'm putting glue on the next little triangular tab and then coming over on this side to align it and then giving it a squeeze. Just like that. And then again, next little tab here. Get that nice and aligned. And give it a squeeze. So there we go. That is the face of our cute little pumpkin here. All right, and this tiny little tab, you know what, just push it out. Don't worry about putting glue on it. Let's just get our glue on this next larger tab here and tuck that in and get it aligned and give it a squeeze. There we go. And the vellum on this actually is going to go in once we have this constructed. So we'll finish this side first, and then we'll put the vellum on. You kind of have to wait to put the vellum on, otherwise you couldn't do it while it was flat, basically is what I'm trying to say. All right, so I'm putting glue on that last little triangular tab there. You can see that little tab there, and I'm going to connect it to this edge here on the other side, on this neighbor, and just give it a squeeze. Okay, so now that we have the face pretty much constructed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my vellum in place. Okay, and again, you're kind of working on little angles here, but it'll work. Shouldn't be a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the eyeball here, and I'm just going to do little dots of glue around the eye. Okay, and then take my little eyeball vellum piece and just lay it right on top there, and just give it a few seconds to let it grip. Just squeeze it up against there, and you can see how nicely that fits and sits. Okay, let's grab our next little eyeball piece, and same thing, just a few little dots around the perimeter of our eyeball. And just pop that in place. So as long as you are covering up the little hole there, and remember there's going to be a panel going over this, so it doesn't have to be like perfect. Just cover that up so that when the light shines through, we get a nice yellow glow. Okay. All right, so now we've got little eyebrows here. Make sure you grab the right piece and just throw a few dots around the perimeter. No one's going to see the inside of this, so it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to dab that a bit and just place that little piece of vellum right over that, like so. And move on to the other side. Well, maybe one more little dot there. There we go. Oops. My fingers are starting to get a little sticky here. There we go. Okay, let's grab our little nose piece, which is this guy here. And again, just a few little dots around the perimeter. I'm going to dab that down. And get that in place. And finally, our little mouth. And here's my little banana looking piece. Well, he looks like he just ate some cake and made it quite the mess. All right, so let's cover that up. Make sure that you're completely covering the little cutout. There we go. Okay, and there you go. So you can see how nicely that worked out. Okay. And we can kind of continue on here with the assembly of the structure. And before you know it, we'll be done. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this piece here. Just get a little glue right there. And you just spread that out a bit. And just get that nice and aligned. And just give it a squeeze. Here we go. Okay, you can peel that back and get your glue on the next little triangle. And there we go. And again, don't be overly concerned if you kind of make a mess on the structure here, because we've got our panels that are going to cover this up. So just make sure that you get good coverage on there and that every little piece is nice and lined up like that. Okay, and then we can work our way down. Move that out of the way. I'm just going to throw a little bit of glue on that tiny little tab and then focus more on that big one there. There we go. And there's that one. Just be patient. And eventually, when we get to the end of this, it's going to kind of stretch it out a little bit, and there's going to be some tension there. It's going to make sure that you don't work too quickly. You want to give that time, or give that glue ample time to set, so that when we do get to that period where you're kind of stretching it out to connect it all together, it doesn't break away. So just make sure that your glue is nice and set. And the key with this right now is just to use minimal glue. You don't need a ton. You start using too much, it's going to warp the paper, and then it takes forever to dry, and you just end up with a huge pain in the butt. But there's half of it is pretty much complete now. So what we can do is let's get our next side here all folded and scored, and what we'll do is connect this to that other piece so that we have like one long piece, and we can continue on with our assembly here. Now just give that a little fold. Okay, so we've got this piece here, this piece that we've just kind of just folded actually, and we're going to begin by piecing these two sides together to create one solid piece. And I'm just going to start at the top. I feel like that is going to help us ensure that everything goes together nice and precise. And just line that up nicely at the correct angle. And just kind of give it a squeeze. Okay. And let's move that out of the way and get our glue on the next little triangular tab here. And I may just go 2 at a time here, just to make things a little bit easier. There's 1, and there's 2. You can see how I'm just following the, just making sure that the edge of this piece is lined up straight along the little score marks on the neighboring piece. And that's probably the best way to explain it, and that's the best way to ensure that you're getting everything nice and properly lined up. So I'm going to flip this over real quick so I can get my glue in from the inside. on the next two little triangular tabs here. And flip it back and get that lined up. Give it a squeeze, and I'm using my other thumb and my other finger back there. Got both of them working here to get the other tab set up and glued down. There we go. And that just leaves 3 more little tabs. I'm just going to do 2 at a time though. Get some glue on that tab there, glue on that tab there, and connect that, and then connect that one. There we go. And it just leaves 1 more little tab here. This little triangular tab down at the bottom. You can see it right there. And connect that. Okay. All right, so pretty much more than halfway there now. And at this point, we're just going to continue on like we did in the first section. Get our tabs here. I'm just going to do the first 2 and line that up nicely. Don't worry about that tiny, tiny little tab there. Ain't going to do much for us. It's just going to give us a headache. And sometimes, you know, the reason that you have that little tab there, again, is to block out the light. Could have made the tabs bigger, but then it wouldn't all be one piece, and you'd end up having to glue a bunch of extra stuff together and spend a lot more time on this when that one little section really isn't going to make or break the project. So if you're wondering why it's like that to save you time and to make things actually easier for you. Because again, you're really not going to see that anyway after we put the little panels on. So we're always thinking about time as well. And you know, some of our projects do take quite a bit of time, but you know, you're working on a piece of art, I think, anyway. I think all this stuff is little works of art, and I don't think we could call it that if it didn't take a little bit of time, you know? I don't think that, I don't think that the Mona Lisa or Starry Night was done in 40 minutes. Okay, looks like we are rocking and rolling here. Almost through the assembly of the base of this thing. Just moving right along here onto the next little tab. And as we approach the finale of this portion of the assembly, just remember that you're going to have that other end of this thing kind of getting in the way of your hand. So just kind of push that out of the way so that it doesn't obstruct anything that we're trying to accomplish here. And before you know it, we'll be done with this. The panels are going to go on pretty quickly. You only need to put glue in 2 little sections, so those will go on nice and quick. And then it's just a matter of piecing everything together and just gluing everything together. So that's going to be the fun part. I always like to kind of do things in little stages like that and then put it all together. Just makes the process a little bit more fun. Okay, so again, I'm going to just skip that tiny little tab there and go to this tab here. And again, just make sure that you are lining these things up correctly so that it's getting the right curvature here. You can see how that's nice and curved. And I might need to kind of maybe back out just a tiny little bit here. Okay. All right, so moving right along, we got 2 little tabs left here on this section. And let me get a little bit more glue on there. Hey Siri, how many days until Halloween?
It's 55 days until then.
All right, hope you guys are ready. Okay, there we go. So that is that. And that just leaves one more section and then the last section to kind of close it all up. Let me fold this out of the way. And I am, just for the sake of making my life easier here, I'm going to just do these 3 tabs all at the same time here. I think I can handle it. Just give it a squeeze. Give that a squeeze. And then make sure that I'm getting this lined up nicely. And give that a squeeze. There we go. Looks like that worked out nicely. I'll go back to our bottom here. We've got 2 tabs here on the bottom. A little bit of glue, a little bit of glue. Okay. And again, just make sure that you get these sections lined up correctly. And that last one there. And then at this point, we're just going to connect these 2 sides together and make it all one solid little pumpkin, jack-o'-lantern, whatever you want to call him. He's a jack-o'-lantern. He's been carved. Okay, so there you can see this is pretty straightforward as well. I'm going to start up here at the top. Just want to make sure that I get everything lined up correctly. So just line that up as accurately as possible. Make sure that the top is nice and flush. Give it a little squeeze. And then we are definitely going to have to work from the inside here so that we don't pull this apart. So I'm going to kind of flip this. You can see in here. I'm going to flip 2 of these tabs over and get glue on them. Just work it right out to the base there and get it nice and aligned. And get that one aligned. There we go. Going pretty smooth for me here. All right, so we'll kind of take a look on the inside here and fold those triangular tabs over and get our glue right on those tabs. And again, if you get a little bit of glue that squirts out here, it's not the end of the world. It's probably going to happen here because we're kind of having to shove our glue bottle inside of our little pumpkin cavity. And it's not a big deal. Just rub it in. Okay. And we're going to go down here. I've got 3 tabs left. I'm going to fold them over. You can see them there, those 3 that are kind of sticking up. And either way, whichever side is easier for you to kind of bring the glue in, just drop a little glue on there and then use the tip of the glue bottle to kind of smear it around, almost like my finger when I smear things around. Okay, and get them nice and lined up and connected. Squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. Here we go. All right, well done. Hope that yours came out just as good as mine did, if not better. There he is, super cute. All right, we are gonna put a base on this guy. Okay, so let's do that first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the front of his face here and I'm going to glue this down first because I want this to be the most precise little area. Okay. And get that glued down. And the rest of these, I'm just going to glue these down in one fell swoop here. Okay. So just make sure that that's got a good hold. I'm going to fold it back just a tiny bit. I'll bring the tabs up a tad and work my way around. I'm going to get glue on the larger part of the tab here. And then as usual, I'm going to get a nice line right out to the edge. And I'm going to spread that nice and thin. And again, don't worry about making a mess here because this is all going to be covered up. But, you know, kind of try to be a little careful, I guess. Okay, and then we're just going to take this piece here and just flap it down, flap it, flip it, and you may need to kind of nudge some of the sides in or out, like this side here. I'm going to kind of just nudge that in slightly to line that up with this piece here, just like that. There we go. Just work your way around as you're applying a downward force on this piece just to make sure that it sticks nicely. And then if you need to, you can put that down on your surface, take a little dowel and push the rest of those tabs down so that they get a nice firm hold. And that looks pretty good. So what you can do then is there's another little liner piece and we're going to glue that down. So you can take some glue and just throw it on there on the inside, drop this piece in, get it lined up so that it, there we go. I'm going to use a dowel to kind of move that into place. There we go. And that's just going to kind of make this thing more sturdy. There we go. Okay, so that is that. And at this point, we're ready to start putting our little panels on. Now, what I would suggest doing is getting like a 3/8 inch dowel or something thicker, and we're going to kind of train this a little bit so that it's not so flat and it kind of wraps around the structure a little bit easier. Just a tad, not a ton. Okay, and this panel here, we're gonna probably start at the bottom, and it's not gonna go all the way up to the top. That's like the lid, or the little lip for the lid, but that's what that's gonna look like. Okay, so let me see here. Let me kind of fold that a little bit so we don't get a big crease right at the side of the mouth there. And actually, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at the top instead, because the bottom's going to have it's going to have the rosette on there, and if it's not perfect, then at least it'll be covered up a little bit more, because that rosette will kind of, it's a little bit of a busier piece down there, that rosette, and if there's something that isn't perfectly aligned, you're less likely to see it. So I'm just throwing a little bit of glue right at the top. We're not going to cover this whole thing with glue because the entire thing is not actually going to be touching the main structure of our pumpkin. But you want to get that lined up and pretty much flush with the little score mark there. Okay, and make sure that it's nice and centered, obviously. And then kind of wrap it around the design here and make sure that it's not obstructing the little cutouts, and then make any fine adjustments that you may need to make that happen. And I'm just kind of squeezing right up here in this little area where I put the glue. Don't squeeze too hard. And then let's flip this back here. This is the back side of the face. And we're just going to throw a little bit of glue right at the bottom. And I'm going to spread that nice and thin and make sure I get it all the way out to the very bottom of that piece. And then just gently, just wrap it around, wrap it down, and connect it right up to the bottom there. Make sure that it's nice and centered, like that. It should just meet right at the bottom there. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Okay. All right. And I think that's got a good enough grip. So we can move on to this side here. And again, let's just give the top a little bit of a curve, give the bottom a little bit of a curve, and then maybe just kind of just gently bend it and make it a little round there in the center. Okay. Again, let's start at the top. Let's get our glue right up here. And I'm going to spread that out. Okay. And let's get that aligned nicely right up to that score mark, and make sure it's nice and centered. And just kind of get a feel for how that's going to look. And there you go. That's going to be awesome. And just give that a squeeze right up there. Make sure that that is set. And then we can put some glue on the back side of this. And I'm going to spread that right out to the very edge so I don't have that peeling back at all. Okay, nice and even, nice and gentle. Just match it right up to the bottom there. Okay, next piece here, just going to train the very top and the bottom, and then just a very light train down the center here. Okay. And then if you want, you kind of curve this piece in a little bit. Okay. And let's throw our glue right up at the top. Make sure you get it right up to the very, very tip there. And get that lined up nicely. Make sure it's nice and centered. And before it fully sets, again, maybe just put it down at the bottom there and just make sure that it's all nice and aligned so that the face looks good. And that looks pretty darn good to me. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a squeeze up here. And again, you know, we're working with paper here. So it's not like plastic where everything is going to be perfectly seamless or whatnot, but I think it still looks really cool. So I think actually it's probably cooler because it's handmade, not made in a factory. Okay, let's get the bottom of this in place. Just kind of nudge it around a little bit to make sure that you got it nice and centered, and then take a look at your pumpkin's face and just make sure that that all looks good. That's cute. Really cute. Okay. And then all that's left is, well, we have 5 more little panels here. Same process, except we don't have to worry about the face. So you can actually take this and just kind of train the whole thing like so. Let's get our glue on the top. Spread it thin. Again, if you don't want to use your finger, use a piece of paper. Whatever you want to do, just paint it on there nicely. And line it up. Right up against that little score mark. Make sure it's centered. Get a feel for how it's going to lay on the project. That looks great. And actually, in the case of a pumpkin, the seams are cool because they do have little ribs, you know, all throughout the pumpkin. So it actually looks pretty realistic anyway. All right, and then let's flip that over. Let's get our glue on here. I'm going to just take my little piece of paper and just paint that all the way up to the edge. Get rid of that. And just line that up nicely. There we go. Beautiful. I think that's got a good hold. We can move on to the next piece here. Okay. Get our glue on there. Like that. Line it up to that score mark, centered. see what it looks like. That looks good, and we need to nudge it left a tiny bit. Beautiful. Okay. We're almost done here, guys. I think it's gonna be one of my favorite pieces for sure. Definitely worth the effort. Kind of in a Zen mode right now. So you'll notice that at the beginning of the video with the simple stuff, I get a little chatty, and then when we get into prime time here, I kind of get less chatty and more focused. So I hope you're okay with that. All right, get that nice and aligned. Beautiful. What a nice piece. And remember what I said about those little tabs on the actual structure and how it really didn't matter if they were glued or not. And you can see that it really doesn't, just based on, you know, how this thing is turning out and what you actually see from the outside, which isn't much, you know. So again, there's no reason to stress out over those little tabs there. They're there for a reason, but they don't really need to be, they don't have anything to do with the overall structure or the support for the piece, so don't worry too much about it. Okay, next piece. This is actually kind of fun. In some deranged way, I really enjoy doing things like this. Repetitive things like this, especially maybe because I know that the end result is imminent, and I'm going to get to witness that here in just a minute. So I think I'm just excited. All right, here we go. Let's get our glue on there. Just kind of work that out to the edge like that, and just connect it. Make sure that the bottom is nice and flush with the bottom. You don't want one little section to be off and then this thing won't sit flat. Which actually probably won't be a problem because it's going to sit on a rosette anyway, so I wouldn't stress out about it too much. Okay, that looks like it's got a pretty good hold. And you can see what our pumpkin's starting to look like. Let's see what, oh yeah, that's cute. Look at that. Okay, sorry, I'm getting excited here. All right, let's wrap that a little bit around that dowel. Let's get our glue on here. Spread that thin, and get that lined up. And let's check that out. That looks good. Perfect. Guys, this is coming out great. Hope you're really enjoying yourselves during this project. I really wish that, sometimes I wish that I could watch a movie or listen to some music while I'm making these videos, but that's okay. I'll suck it up for you guys because I love yous. Okay. Last little piece there. And again, this is a pretty monotonous process, so if you get the gist, you can move on and just, you know, go to the next step here. You can just fast forward. But I just want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Okay. All right, one more little piece here. Okay, get that lined up nicely. Everything should fit perfectly. Everything should be nice and symmetrical. Just like that, and look at that. Yes. Well, kudos to the Dreaming Tree team for another beautiful project. Okay. All right, last bit of glue here. Let's just spread that out to the very edge. Just kind of painting it. Okay. There we go. Gotta bring that down a tad. There we go. Okay, so there is our little pumpkin head, and I think his head is cold. He needs a hat. Look at that, super cute. Okay, all right, let's finish up our rosette. Okay, so I'm gonna put the purple piece on over the gold piece here. And we do want to try to get the purple part as close to the inside. Actually, it should be right flush with the inside of our gold piece. So let's flatten that out real quick. And we need to kind of squeeze the purple piece in as far as we can so that it's pretty much flush in the center with our gold piece. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. And just make sure that you've got everything nicely aligned. Okay, got a weird overlap here. Okay, so that worked out nicely. And I really layered the glue on there real heavy so that it gave me plenty of time to kind of get these in place before it really set. So it was like really gloppy. You saw how much glue I had on there. That's kind of what you're going to need to do. And just make sure they both kind of line up in the center so that you have a nice little amount of the gold showing through, or whatever color you decided to use. Okay, so once we have this all together, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little piece here and we're going to put that, we're going to use it for two reasons. One is to hold our rosette together, and two is to give this a surface for the pumpkin to sit on. Okay, so you can take this piece, just scrunch this together nicely, take this piece and just center it right on there and push down with your fingers, and then use your other fingers to kind of push in on this so that it sits for us nicely. And then just give this a little bit of time to fully set. Okay, and that's going to be a nice little platform for our pumpkin. And it's also going to hold the rosette together. So again, be patient with this and make sure that this sets. If you're using hot glue, probably won't take that long. Me, on the other hand, using standard glue, it's going to take a little bit longer, which is fine. Okay, so our rosette is all done here, and really all that's left to do is glue our rosette to the top of our box. Okay, so that's going to go on like that. Okay, so let's find the center point here. Try to get it nice and centered. And we're just going to take and put some glue on the bottom of this thing. And again, don't worry about my boo-boo here. It's totally fine. And we're going to take this and find your best side, what you think is going to be the front. I think that's going to be my front. And I'll put my rosette right on the center there. You want to make sure that it's nice and centered on the box, so you can kind of flip it this way and look out from underneath to ensure that you got it nice and centered. That looks good, I think. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. And then, once that's nice and centered, you can take your glue and just put some glue right here on this thing. I'm going to kind of cake it up a little bit and just cover that whole thing just to make sure that it definitely doesn't go anywhere. Let's take a look here. That looks great. Let me get this out of the way. And take our final pumpkin and just get that nice and centered on our base. Okay. Now let's take a look at that and make sure that that is nice and centered. And you know, give that some time to dry. Obviously, if you have, if you're using hot glue, it should go pretty quick. If you're not, use the front of the face here. Here, I'll kind of show you on this camera angle here. Use the front of the face, that panel, use that as a guide to get that aligned with the center of the panel here, or the front of the box. Okay, so that's kind of a good way to know that you've got it nice and centered, and then just kind of flip it around, spin it around, make sure that it's exactly where you want it, and that is it. Now, I'm going to jazz this up with probably some some bling here and there. So take a look at the final photo on the website or at the beginning of the video to kind of take a look at what else we did to kind of spice this up. There's also a little pearl at the top, a gold pearl to kind of top it off, but that is our final little project here. And as you can see, the lid comes off so that you can put a little tea light in there. And then of course, it's also a gift box, so you can lift the whole thing up and put a little treat in there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this project, the first of many Halloween projects this fall. If you did enjoy the video, please take a moment to visit us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. And if you do make this, especially this, I would love to see your version of it. You can post it in the official Dreaming Tree group on Facebook. So head over to Facebook, do a search for Dreaming Tree group. You can join the almost 7,000 Dreaming Tree customers, dreamers as we call them, who share their work with us regularly, and I'd love to see your version. So thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.